So if you've been watching HBO's adaptation of The Last of Us, you're probably up to speed on episode 3. It's titled Long, Long Time. It's a narrative that's told as a series of flashbacks and centering on a love story between the characters Bill and Frank. The show has followed the game very closely so far, and while I'm not going to get into any kind of intertextual thing, the episode took an opportunity to breathe a lot of life into Bill and Frank's narrative in ways that I found generous and affectionate. Basically, I've been looking for words to discuss it, so I guess I can just take it from the beginning. Bill is a prepper.
Oh, you're a paranoid schizophrenic too?
The Gadsden flag, guns, ammo, sovereign citizen, outward-facing security camera survivalism. So Bill, as you can imagine, is eccentric, but as you can probably also imagine, he being an incredibly grouchy libertarian paranoiac while specializing in avoiding detection from the government granted him a useful skill set for the end of the world, and also his ideal post-apocalyptic scenario. Bill is alone, and as far as he's concerned, this is good. He is able to construct a physical barrier to keep the outside world at bay, basically to have no need for nobody, and for him it was perfect. Until...
I'm just trying to get to Boston.
Alone?
We started with 10. But yeah, I'm alone.
So Bill finds Frank. And Frank is very handsome and also very hungry. So against his so-called better judgment, I guess, Bill decides to let a stranger into his world. He gives him shelter and clothing and food and drink. And he falls in love. The trajectory of the rest of his life is irrevocably changed after this wandering man fell into a hole. And despite infectious cordyceps and night raids, Bill and Frank managed to carve a life out for themselves with some conceivable relative security. They build relationships with other people, they grow old, and they die in each other's arms. It's very sweet, if a bit saccharine, a bit maudlin, but it's earnest in a way that caught me off guard, in a way I didn't really expect. Perhaps some personal experience is dovetailing with fiction here. I don't know. I do know and understand why my past time as a frustrated and aggrieved white man is in some ways a justifiably unpopular story to tell, or it's uninteresting for many. Even with the good grace that comes from avoiding sovereign citizenship, or bright yellow flags with snakes on them, or subscription to the virulence of the nationalism dressed as Christianity from my youth, or how this lonely, angry man who turns out to be struggling with his sexuality trope is well-worn territory, enough to be condemnable for some. But I can't help but recognize something in these results of the marriage between shame and resentment in Bill's character, the feeling that time has slipped away from you without your say, in ways beyond your control, and you find yourself given the choice between a life that isn't yours or right for you, and the almost wholesale rejection of your community and the people who supposedly love and care for you the most, to feel like you've been entered into a social transaction you never asked for or wanted, and a life as someone or something to be dealt with, disposed of, or forgotten, and how this made me so angry and so bitter that I was ready to check out at any moment and to be done with it all, to wash my hands of it. It's something that begins as this violent self-loathing, but it eventually softens into this embittered and embattled dull roar, a desire to get my cat and my guns and my little history degree and fuck off as far away as possible to mind my own business. How's that for common courtesy? As I gathered is the intended effect of all post-apocalyptic fiction, I imagine how I myself might use my own accumulation of a bunch of hands-on skills collected over some years to survive in a cataclysmic situation like this, or I presented with the neat and tidy circumstances that we see here. And how on the one hand, in my honest opinion, if you're lucky, part of your life is written quietly in dirt in some far out place, or you've pitched a tent, or in some running water that you've cast into, in places both near and far to you, and how this is a joy to have these experiences, because these skills that get us outside are shared between people, And so even when we're alone, it feels like someone is always with you. But on the other hand, you can build walls out in the woods, and you can build fallout shelters inside of closets. And these same skills and happy memories associated with dirt and water and wildlife and guns, they easily turn around on us. And how sometimes you're angry because you're alone and gay, and people don't like that, and I don't like that, and this thing I don't control and possibly don't even understand is an impasse for most of the people in my life. It's hard learning that as a child, and it's something that still happens. But eventually, we learn that the thing about ourselves actually worth changing is something that we actually always had control over in the first place. Mostly that I myself can be known and loved through the love that I share with other people. And that underneath, or maybe contained within all this obnoxious rigidity and increased capacity to be stuck in your ways for whatever reason, is the capability to care deeply for something or someone, and to make your prime goal the protection and care of that person, in recognition that they have something to share with the world, just as they've shared themselves with you. To use your worst years to inform your best, and realize that maybe to reflect on your past is about finding new ways to need and be needed after everything has fallen apart. That even the most aggrieved, angry, and isolated of us can be found and rescued by the company and kindness of a gentler man, and that even when hope is so far away, I can find it within myself to let the outside world in again.
Government are all Nazis!